Joanna and I didn't just meet in Hawaii. We spent a good deal of time together. I fell in love with your daughter. She fell in love with me. Remember when a movie about one dinner conversation managed to make an entire country deeply uncomfortable and then win 2 Oscars anyway? Released in 1967 by Columbia Pictures, Guess Who's Coming to Dinner follows Joanna Drayton, played by Katharine H. Putin, who brings her fiancé home to meet her parents, played by Spencer Tracy and Katharine Hepburn, and casually announces that she's getting married. The fiancé is Dr. John Apprentice, played by Sidney Poitier. He's accomplished, charming, and apparently the last person her very liberal parents expected to actually have to be liberal about. The family gathering also housed memorable roles from Isabel Sanford, Cecil Kellaway, and B.I.A. Richards. Today, we're going to count down 10 weird facts about Guess Who's Coming to Dinner that you probably never knew. And stick around for number 1 because Katharine Hepburn's tears in that final scene were real. And the reason why makes the whole movie hit completely differently. But before we get into it, hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell. It helps YouTube put this in front of more classic film fans who'd want to see it. Alright, let's go drop a bomb on mom and dad. Number 10. The film that nobody in Hollywood would touch. By 1966, Stanley Kramer had spent his entire career making movies that nobody else in Hollywood wanted to make. Racism, nuclear war, fascism, the whole cheerful lineup. Columbia Pictures knew exactly who he was and what they were getting when they worked with him, which makes it all the more remarkable that even Kramer couldn't get this one off the ground easily. The subject was interracial marriage, and according to Sidney Poitier, no producer and no director could get the money for it. And even if they could, theaters across the country simply wouldn't book it. The studios weren't ignorant of the topic. They were actively avoiding it. It had been essentially untouched on screen since the silent era, treated like a third rail that nobody in the industry had the nerve to grab. Kramer pushed it through anyway, with Poitier looking him dead in the eye before filming began and asking whether he thought the country was ready for it. Kramer's answer was no, but he made it anyway. Because sometimes the most important films aren't the ones that arrive when the world is ready. They're the ones that show up and demand that the world catch up. Columbia's concerns didn't stay quiet either. The studio that had every reservation about making it ended up releasing one of the most celebrated films of the decade. Hollywood's loss of nerve became Kramer's legacy, and that tension between institutional cowardice and individual courage is what gave this film its backbone before a single frame was ever shot. Number 9. 3 legends signed on without reading the script. Stanley Kramer pitched Guess Who's Coming to Dinner to Spencer Tracy, Katharine Hepburn, and Sidney Poitier without a finished screenplay. 3 of the most respected actors in Hollywood history, and all 3 said yes without reading a single page, which in any era of Hollywood makes agents physically ill. Tracy had worked with Kramer before and trusted him completely. Hepburn had no prior working relationship with Kramer whatsoever, but she came on board out of devotion to Tracy and genuine belief in the subject matter. Then Kramer went to Poitier with a pitch that was half idea and half leverage, telling him flatly that Tracy and Hepburn were already in. Poitier's answer was immediate. I don't know if you can bring it off with a studio, but I'll do it. Absolutely. 3 commitments, 0 pages of dialogue. What makes this genuinely remarkable is the position these people were in. These weren't grateful newcomers happy to have a phone call returned. These were A-list legends with the clout to dictate their own terms on any production in the industry. Any one of them could have demanded a completed script, rewrites, casting approval, and a long list of requirements before agreeing to anything. But all 3 looked at an unfinished pitch from a director they collectively trusted and decided that was enough to commit their names, their time, and their reputations to a film that existed mostly inside Kramer's head. The result became one of the most celebrated pictures of the decade, which says everything about what trust between artists who share a vision can actually produce. Number 8. Their love story was illegal in 17 states. When Guess Who's Coming to Dinner came out in 1967, the central relationship in the film, a white woman and a black man planning to get married, was a criminal offense in 17 U.S. states. Not controversial. Not frowned upon. An actual crime with actual legal consequences. Interracial marriage was still illegal across a significant chunk of America when audiences were buying tickets to watch this movie, which meant that Columbia Pictures was essentially distributing a film where the happy ending was legally actionable in nearly a third of the country. The couple on screen could have been arrested for the exact relationship the movie spent 2 hours asking audiences to celebrate. And yet there sat those audiences, popcorn in hand, watching it play out on the big screen. Some of them were in states where walking out of that theater and doing what those characters were doing would have landed them in a courtroom. The dinner table arguments in the film weren't just dramatic tension. They were a live broadcast of a debate that the country was actively and legally having in real time. Most love stories ask you to root for two people to find each other. This one asked you to root for two people to find each other, while half the country's legal system was still working out whether that was anybody's right. The film didn't pretend that discomfort didn't exist. It sat down right in the middle of it and refused to move. Number 7. Making this movie came with death threats. Kramer understood exactly what kind of reaction this film would generate. He knew that a meaningful portion of the audience would leave the theater furious, and he knew the subject matter would make everyone attached to the production target. But he walked onto that set and made it anyway. He was right about the reaction. After the film opened, Kramer received death threats, real ones, delivered specifically because he had the nerve to put an interracial relationship on a movie screen. Katharine Hepburn, the actress playing Joanna, started receiving hate mail for the same reason. After the movie came out, she recalled beginning to receive threatening letters from people who could not separate a fictional character from the actress who played her. The character was fictional. The people sending those letters were very much not. The specific trigger for most of the fury was the interracial kiss depicted in the film, a moment that ran only a few seconds on screen, and then generated enough rage to fill Kramer's mailbox for months. He had predicted every bit of it before filming began, made the film anyway, and proved that being right about the backlash and refusing to let it stop you are not mutually exclusive positions. That courage, quiet and deliberate as it was, turned out to be just as important as anything that ended up on screen. Number 6. No insurance company would touch Spencer Tracy. Spencer Tracy was so ill during production that getting him insured was nearly impossible. Normal coverage was completely out of the question. The situation looked desperate enough that at one point it seemed like the entire production would collapse before a single scene was shot. Kramer eventually found one insurer willing to take the risk, but only at a steep premium of $71,000. To get Columbia across the finish line on top of that, Kramer and Katharine Hepburn did something that almost never happens in Hollywood. They placed their own full salaries in escrow, meaning that if Tracy couldn't finish, that money went straight to the studio to cover the cost of reshooting his scenes with another actor. 2 layers of financial protection stacked on top of each other just to get cameras rolling. Tracy, by most accounts, never found out. Kramer and Hepburn carried that quietly, because the last thing a man fighting through serious illness needs is the knowledge that 2 people he cares about have financially chained themselves to his survival. Kramer also kept 2 completely separate shooting plans running throughout production, one built around Tracy being present, and one designed to work entirely without him. Every single day that Tracy showed up was a day the backup plan stayed in the drawer. And it stayed there every time. Tracy made it through every scene, which is the only acceptable ending to a contingency plan of that particular weight and consequence. Number 5. Tracy finished filming and then died 17 days later. Spencer Tracy wrapped his last scene on this film on May 24, 1967. When he finished, Kramer told the crew that what they had just witnessed represented a heroic act, a conquest for everyone involved. Tracy himself, before leaving the set for the very last time, turned to the cast and crew and said, "If you people can have anything approaching what we have, then you can understand what love is." 17 days later, he was gone. 2 days after that, the Supreme Court handed down its ruling in Loving v. Virginia, which made interracial marriage legal nationwide. The relationship at the center of this film, still a criminal offense in 17 states when cameras first rolled, went from legally actionable to constitutionally protected, while Tracy's body was barely in the ground. The film didn't premiere until December. By the time audiences filed into theaters, the controversial premise the studio had nervously hedged its bets against was already the law of the land. Tracy delivered that final monologue without ever knowing any of it. Not the ruling, not the reception, and not how completely and decisively history would validate every single risk that Kramer had taken to get this film made. He gave everything he had to a story whose ending he never got to witness, and somehow that makes the performance even more extraordinary. Number 4. A single joke got pulled mid-run. Guess Who's Coming to Dinner had a throwaway joke referencing Martin Luther King Jr. that landed perfectly during its theatrical run. Audiences laughed, the moment passed, and the film moved on. The line belonged to Tilly, the Drayton family's housekeeper played by Isabel Sanford. When told yet another guest was coming to dinner, she shot back with a sarcastic one-liner about the Reverend Martin Luther King, and audiences laughed comfortably at it for months. But then April 4th, 1968 arrived and completely destroyed the context. Dr. King was assassinated, and that joke stopped being a joke overnight. The same line that had drawn easy laughs since December suddenly became the last thing anyone sitting in a darkened theater wanted to experience. Columbia Pictures was still in the middle of the film's theatrical run when it happened, which meant they had a decision to make faster than anyone in Hollywood prefers to make decisions. Leave the line in and let audiences absorb that collision in real time, or cut it. They cut it. Columbia contacted theater owners directly, requested the scene be removed from their prints, and went further by providing hands-on instruction on how to physically remove it from each individual copy. It was a rolling removal across theaters nationwide. During those months in 1968, Columbia did something the film industry almost never manages. It acknowledged that reality had completely overtaken the script and acted decisively, without waiting for a committee to weigh in or a memo to be approved. Number 3. The Oscars didn't look away. For a film the studio had nearly walked away from funding, Guess Who's Coming to Dinner showed up at the Academy Awards like it owned the place. 10 nominations total, including Best Picture, Best Director, and Best Original Screenplay, which William Rose took home for a script he had written in just 5 weeks. Spencer Tracy received a posthumous Best Actor nomination, his name read aloud 10 months after he had died. Katharine Hepburn won Best Actress, her second Oscar, for a performance she would later say she could not fully separate from the grief she was privately carrying while she gave it. The line between the character's emotion and her own had dissolved completely, and what audiences saw on screen was both things at once. And then there was Bea Richards, the veteran actress who played Dr. Prentice's mother, the woman who corners Matt Drayton and reads him completely in about 30 seconds flat. She earned a Best Supporting Actress nomination for a role that could easily have been a footnote and instead became one of the most quietly devastating performances in the entire film. She didn't win, but that nomination stood as proof that the Academy, at least in that particular year, was not willing to pretend that she hadn't been the most electric presence in every scene she inhabited. Number 2. Poitier was playing this story right before he lived it. Sidney Poitier spent the making of this film playing a black man who has to stand in a room and defend his right to be with the woman he loves to her skeptical white family. It was 1967, and the role carried a weight that most performances never approach. But 2 years later, on the set of The Lost Man, Poitier met a white Canadian actress named Joanna Shimkus, and they began a relationship. They had 2 daughters together and eventually married in 1976, remaining together until his death in 2022, a span of 45 years. The man who spent weeks on a soundstage arguing the moral and emotional case for an interracial relationship walked off that set and, not long after, quietly began living one. There was no studio setup, no carefully constructed narrative, and no script. Just a real and lasting version of the exact thing the movie had spent 2 hours asking audiences to accept and understand. Dr. John Prentice, the character he played with such quiet dignity and conviction, would have approved completely. Number 1. Katharine's tears were never in the script. That final monologue, Spencer Tracy delivering a speech about love and memory while Katharine Hepburn stands across from him, is the scene that people remember long after everything else fades. Most assume they're watching 2 legends hitting their marks with practice precision. They're only half right. The scene took a full week to shoot, built entirely around whatever Tracy had available on any given day, short windows of energy followed by long stretches of recalibration. When he finally got through it from start to finish in one complete take, the entire crew rose to their feet. Tracy was too spent to respond. He simply stood there while everyone around him acknowledged what they had just witnessed. A career spanning decades, ending in a standing ovation given to a man too exhausted to receive it. As for Hepburn's tears, those were not constructed emotion deployed on cue. She was not listening to a character deliver scripted lines. She was listening to the man she had loved for over 25 years, knowing she was running out of chances to hear him speak like that. It was real grief that accidentally became cinema, captured on film without anyone planning for it. And then she walked away from it entirely. Katharine Hepburn never watched the finished film. Not once, not ever. Because for her it was never a landmark or a celebrated piece of cinema history. It was the last footage that existed of Spencer Tracy, and one viewing on the day she saw it was all she could bear. History spent decades calling it one of the greatest performances she ever gave. Hepburn, by all accounts, quietly agreed that it probably was, and decided that history was entirely welcome to it. And there you have it. 10 weird and wild facts about Guess Who's Coming to Dinner. Which fact hit you the hardest? Drop it in the comments. And hey, if you know someone who loves this film, share it with them. Don't forget to subscribe.